Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my video walkthrough for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for Nintendo Wii. Alright, so having completed the sand ship, that really sounds dangerous, doesn't it? Dun dun dun, the signs. So having completed the sand ship and gone to the Isle of Songs and gotten the next song, we're now ready to head to the next Silent Realm. So our next objective is to head to Eldin. Last couple of videos I got a whole bunch of optional collection-y stuff, so it's awesome. We're all stocked up and ready to go. Got a bunch of pieces of heart, all those kinds of things. So head over to Eldin, and actually the location you want to enter is Volcano Ascent. Okay, so this one is the bird statue that is just halfway up the mountain when we were first scaling it in the first place. And right behind us is actually the location of the Silent Realm right there. And you can douse for it too, just to make sure or whatever. Now I would recommend that you recalibrate your controller real quick for two reasons. One, we can't actually do that in the middle of the Silent Realm, but also to make sure that our harp is working properly. Like, if you're having problems playing the harp, you might want to think about, when you start it over again, you might cancel out of it, doing it with Fi, and then recalibrate your controller just to make sure it's all good. Okay, so as always, just reiterating my tips from previously, is that you want to swing really wide with the controller to make sure that you're hitting the far left and far right strings of the harp, otherwise it does not register and will not count. So if you're having trouble with Fi recognizing your strums, that might be part of the problem. You have to swing really, really wide. The next tip I can give you is play just a smidge early, and that tends to help. So, Eldin Silent Realm. This one gets my vote for one of the hardest. There's two that are pretty hard Silent Realms. This is one of them, and the reason is because everything's so far apart. And a lot of the guardians are actually really close to awkward positions. Like, they'll have like a sand slide, and you fall down the sand slide, there's a guardian at the base. And so, like, by the time you've recovered enough where you can start moving again, the guardian's already hit you. So it's kind of like, if you mess up, you're just dead. Which is kind of rough. So a lot of the Watchers are, I feel like, a little bit more dangerous in this particular Silent Realm than some of the other ones. But also, if you do find yourself without a lot of time or you get seen by a Watcher, some of these areas you have a very long distance to travel before you find another tier, so that can be pretty rough. Alright, Eldin Silent Realm. Now, I'm going to leave this map on the screen for a little bit so that you can totally just like pause the video and then like play your game and like pause your game every once in a while and just see where the next tier is. I apologize for these dusk relics and the tiers looking very similar. This is just what it looks like in game, I don't know. So I literally just took a screenshot of my map after I had discovered all these guys. I took a screenshot before I left the Silent Realm and then like cropped out all the unnecessary stuff. So like all this lava, I just cut it out so you didn't have to look at it. So I just only have the essentials on this map so that it's just less confusing. Anyways, as far as recommendations, there's a couple, there's a lot of little nuances, little tricks to each section. There's not really too much worth mentioning out here, but I will say, as far as recommendations, couple things. I think the two areas that really need to be discussed is this guy and this whole area as well. Both these sand ramps, basically, are the tricky things about this map. So, what you want to do is you want to go over here and grab this guy first. Like, you want to do this while you're safe, while your flower is still intact and you haven't activated the guardians. So what you want to do is you run over here, you wait for this sentry to move over to the right or something, and then you run up here and then run back down or slide and go grab this tier. And then you can run back up here, and there's a sentry right here, so you can't run to this, but you can either run up here, or you can once again wait for the sentry to go back here, wait for it to go back, and then run back around. I know that seems weird, but you run back over here, and then regain your stamina, and then you can run either up here or to the right side, and you just really want to make sure you don't get caught by a sentry. Like, if you are going to get caught by a sentry, try to get caught up here, so that when you slide back down, you slide onto this platform, and not all the way back down. There is a Sky Guardian up here that will see you. It is not too bad. What you want to do is you're trying to lure it over to one side. The one thing you want to watch out for is this Mace Guardian. If you are seen, whatever, if you slide down here, it'll totally smack you. So that's why I recommend you get this first. Anyways, this tier, it's up to you to decide if you want to get it first. So you can do this as your very first one, or you can like maneuver past the Sky Guardian, get this one, and then purposefully not get this one. And the reason for that is because then it gives you some, like you just run past this and you try and get all this stuff, get this guy, run back here, then run up, and then get this guy. Because if you slide back down, you get caught. Then you can try, or you get caught on your way up, and then you're like, oh no, and you slide all the way back down. Then you can get this to give you some safety margin. Then you can try again. So it might actually be in your benefit to not get this first. Like get this one first, and then get this one second, then get this one third, and get this one fourth or third, depending on if you messed up along the way up. Anyways, so I'd recommend you do this first. This is the trickiest part of the entire thing, so I'd recommend you do this very first thing. It's also kind of out of the way. Like everything else, it's like this whole Silent Realm's in sections. You have this section, and this section. So I'd recommend you do this guy first. This thing, the only thing really worth noting here is this sand slide. What you want to do is actually you go down here to go through these little air geyser things that take you across, just like we did in the real game, like during the regular campaign or whatever. You go over here to get this is where we got that Earth Temple key piece. But you can grab this tier, and you can also just hop down and grab this, and I'll show this in the video. But you can get both of these at the same time, but you don't slide down to this side. How you get that is you actually go over here first. You can go all the way back around and stuff, but that's a pain. I would recommend you just hop over here and get both of these at the same time, and I'll show how to do that. The rest of this is all pretty straightforward, and I'll explain that in the following clips. Alright, so once Fi is finally done giving all of her repetitive explanations, you can go ahead and leave the circle, and the first thing I like to do is actually go over here to the left, and you can grab the nearby Dusk Relic that's behind this tower, just because you might as well, it's free. But what you can do is you can actually go step back into the circle to reset the locations of all the Guardians. This doesn't really matter too much. There's two reasons for this. One was to reset the locations of the Flying Guardians so that this one up ahead is still far away from you, and the other reason is so that we could regenerate our stamina. We might as well. There's actually a Dusk Relic on that wall off to the left that I just ran past, but oh well, I'll get it here in a little bit. There's a couple different directions you could go, but I'd highly recommend you go to the north first. There's actually a kind of a dangerous place here at the beginning, so I recommend you do that first, and that's why. So to start, you want to go ahead and run over to the far left side, and I would recommend you get this tier first, because this tier doesn't do you too much good if you end up getting caught. If you get seen by one of the watchers, you'll fall down, and if you do fall down into this trap, you might end up just dying. And actually, probably one of the best things you could do at this point is actually to run back the other way. Like, just the way I came from, I should have run over to the far right side is probably the smartest, so you can assess what to do at this point. Now, if you try to run straight for this area, you'll probably get seen by one of the watchers, either that flying sentry or one of the other just lantern watchers. But either one of those guys are rough. And what I recommend you do is actually just, like, lure the flying watcher, or the flying guardian off to the left side, and then run along the right side. And you should have more than enough time to get there, and you can get to the top and get this tier. There's a Dusk Relic inside the nearby hut, but other than that, I don't think there's anything really super exciting up here. But to go down, what I recommend you do is wait for your stamina to charge back up, and then actually run down the hill. Don't slide, but run down it instead. Because you're going downhill anyways, you go really fast, so it's not hard at all. And there's also a stamina food along the way. But you can easily make your way down here. I like to look and see if the watchers are out of my way or not. Once the one that is at the very top, once it's to the far right, you can make run for it, and you should be just fine. Now, if the watcher halfway down or towards the bottom starts getting in your way, you can totally run uphill if you really need to, even, but go to the right side instead. Just whichever direction it is, you want to run to the opposite side. And so if you're running, you have a lot more control over it, and so I recommend you use all your stamina for that. And even if you run out of stamina partway through that, you'll slide the rest of the way. So as long as you have a lot of control for most of that distance, I think it's a lot more beneficial. Grab the nearby tier next to this flying watcher up here, and then head down the following path and jump into the air geyser. Once you pop out, you want to grab the Dusk Relic that's on the opposite side, then continue on into this fiery area. There is a Sky Watcher here, which isn't too bad, but if you run up the hill, then there is a tier right here. So make sure you grab that. At this point, you can get on top of the rock and jump off to the right. However, it is kind of risky because there is waking water nearby. So I recommend you actually just still travel along the stone path over here, unless you're speedrunning. Then the other way, jumping across the waking water, is a little bit faster, but it is risky. You want to slide down the nearby slide, and there is waking water on the sand itself, which is kind of weird, so you do want to avoid that. If you go off to the left side here, there is a single Dusk Relic, which is nice. And you'll notice there's a tier up ahead, but we can't actually reach it from this side. What you need to do is run back and go this way instead, and go across this air geyser instead. So you could technically get the tier on the left side, but it's much more safe to go to the right side instead for two reasons. One, we'd have to go here anyways, otherwise you'll have to climb all the way back up the sand, and hopefully you have enough time for that before your flower dies or whatever. But if you go over to this right side, you jump in both the air geysers. These are always active in the Silent Realm rather than waiting for the timing like we do in real life. From here, you can actually jump to the sand in between these two slippers of waking water, and you can turn around and let yourself slide in between, but I think it's a lot easier to actually run along the top. And then this way you can go around the water instead using your stamina. From there you can finally start sliding. The problem is if you get that tier and you just immediately start sliding, you might accidentally hit one of those patches of water because they're very narrow, and if your camera is still rotating around, it can be really confusing looking. So I feel like it's a lot safer to use your stamina first. So grab the nearby Dusk Relic, get the next tier along the way, and we're continuing on this way. Now this actually leads back to the entrance actually, so we could have even gone this way first, but like I say, I feel like the sand slide and, well, both the sand slides I guess are the two scary things of this whole region actually. I like to do whatever's the riskiest thing first, because then if I fail, it's not too bad. From here, there's actually a Dusk Relic nearby. We're going to grab that on our way back, though, so it's not too big a deal. You want to continue on across these bridges. Now, I think these weren't here in real life. We had to go around a different way, but they made a bone bridge right here instead. Grab this nearby tier near the rocks, and we continue onwards. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. Like, once you get all of the tiers, then the enemies will not, or you won't lose any time on your flower at that point, after you get all of the tiers. So you can play it two different ways. You can either try and leave some tiers back the way you came on purpose, and the reason you'd want to do that is because if you get seen by a watcher, then you can run to a tier, and this will make you safe again. So that's why you might want to leave a tier until the end of our journey. So you have some tiers on the way towards wherever you're traveling to, and then some tiers on the way back, so it's a little bit safer that way. But otherwise, the other way to do it is to go towards the furthest distance. You just keep grabbing every single tier, and then once you get to the very end, then you have completed your flower, and you're not losing any time at all. Now here's a little trick for this rope up here. I don't know why, I don't see people do this very often, but it's so much easier, I think. So you can actually grab onto the rope, and rather than swinging towards the tier, you can swing away from it so that you backswing into it, and this way you're already positioned well so that you can run, or you can jump back onto the platform. It's very useful for speedrunning this section of the Silent Realm, actually. We gotta continue along this way. If this Guardian's awake, it's really not that hard to deal with. All you gotta do is backflip through here. I have some more detailed instructions on how to deal with Guardians in some of my earlier Silent Realm videos, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but just know it is a thing. Like, you can easily avoid these guys if you have to. It's honestly, I feel like the Sky Guardians are the ones that are really hard to deal with, the flying ones. I don't think they have an official name as far as the difference between them. They're both just called Guardians, but Sky Guardians, Flying Guardians, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and grab this nearby tier and then hop down onto this next ledge. And what you want to do is just kind of like use just a little bit of stamina to hop down, and you can even pull back a little bit in midair, actually. So I pulled back on the analog stick there so that I didn't land in the lava. I think landing in lava in the Silent Realm just makes you reappear back on the nearby land. You don't lose any hearts or anything because you don't have any in this area. You don't lose any additional time, you just lose as much time as you spent making that mistake, I guess. Continuing onwards, you can grab the nearby Dusk Relics if you want to. Again, if you're collecting all of the Dusk Relics in the game, then you should have way more than you need for all of the upgrades, actually. It's kind of a weird thing. If you're going out of your way to collect Dusk Relics, then you have enough. If you're not going out of your way to collect Dusk Relics, you probably don't have enough to get all the upgrades. Just kind of depends on what you want to do, though, I guess. Alright, so here's the final tier, and like I was saying earlier, it's up to you to decide what you want to do. For this particular Silent Realm, there's not really a lot of watchers along the way. Like, seriously, I think there's one along the way. So unless you somehow die on that bridge, the bone bridge along the way here, then you don't have to worry about the Guardians at all. So I completed the flower for this one. That's what I'd recommend for this particular Silent Realm. But yeah, I would recommend that you do the sand slides first, because those are the tricky ones. If you're going to die, that's probably where it's going to be for this Silent Realm. But yeah, on the way back from here anyways, this is the only watcher you have to watch out for. Watching out for watchers. But anyways, so once you get past that, though, you're fine. There's a single Dusk Relic that's on the vines over here, and like I say, you could have grabbed it earlier, but it makes more sense to just grab it now because we're already heading back anyways, and it's along our path. Alright, so having completed the Eldin Silent Realm, you can save real quick if you want to, but all we have to do is head over to the right and then go through this this air geyser here. If you did not blow up the rocks here, unfortunately you're going to have to take the long way around to get all the way up here, but this is the shortcut to get up to this area. From here you can go over to the right, and this leads back to that hot area where we couldn't go through before, otherwise we would catch on fire. And in case you didn't know, also, Link actually had blue earrings before this. He actually did have earrings already in his person. The only thing this did is it changed the color of them as far as the graphics on screen. I do kind of think the earrings are a little bit interesting because it reminds me of getting the bracelets and the rings and stuff in the original Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like, just changing the color of Link's outfit or whatever, get it to be slightly more powerful. But yeah, Fireshield earrings feels kind of like a lame upgrade, at least in comparison to a lot of the other ones we got. But I suppose at that point, like, I'd rather get some of these passive ones and still have all of the regular abilities up until this point, like the fact that we have more active abilities like using the claw shots, for example. I'm glad that we got it earlier than this, you know? That's actually like one of my only complaints about Twilight Princess. I really love that game. That game's awesome. But one of the things I find sort of sad is the first part of the game is like really drawn out and slow paced, and we get like a couple upgrades, and all of a sudden, like, 2/3 of the way through the game, like 75% of the way through the game, we're like bam, 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 get all these like different items that are B button items that we can use, as well as a bunch of hidden skills. So we have all these sword abilities, and it's awesome. It's all of a sudden it's like really fun. All these dynamic ways you can interact with enemies and stuff like that, and combat's just really exciting. And then the game ends, and it's just like over, and I just find that really sad because it's like when I finally get to the point where the game's like getting exciting, then it's just like done. And so Skyward Sword, meanwhile, like we're getting a bunch of those cool abilities, both items and as well as sword attacks and stuff like that, better Skyward Strike, whatever. And like that happens a little bit earlier in the whole game cycle or whatever. And then we have this, now we're getting passive abilities here at the end that don't really matter so much, and it doesn't really change our gameplay very much, but it kind of just means that it's extending the gameplay of the cool abilities that I actually like. So in comparison, I actually think it's really cool. Up ahead we have some spume. Now these particular ones are of the cursed variety. So cursed enemies their attacks will cause the cursed status effect, which makes it so you can't use your sword for a little while. So we have cursed spume, there's cursed keys, and then there's Dark Lizalfos, is I think what they're all titled. Anyways, they all kind of give you the cursed status effect, and I'll explain more about that here in a little bit. Now, continuing on to the opposite side, you can go outside, and there's actually this little area where there's some vines leading down on the left, and it leads down to this lower platform. As you can see on your map, if you place a beacon, you'll actually notice it's behind one of these pillars. Awful suspicious. There's something there. So if you jump off and then dive off to the side a little bit to go around the pillar, you can land on top of this one that has a goddess cube. This particular one leads to a piece of heart. So in the original Legend of Zelda, there was an enemy called a bubble, which was this invulnerable just skull thing that would kind of patrol around the edges of the room, and if it touched you, then it would curse you, and you'd be unable to use your sword for several seconds. So they have variations of that enemy, or other enemies that cause the same effect, which is the cursed variety here in Skyward Sword. Now, in some of the Zelda games, you just have to wait for the curse to wear off, but in other ones, you can actually remove the curse early, usually by playing an instrument. So I always think of Majora's Mask, where you can play the Song of Storms, and this will blow away curses, so you can use it to get rid of the curse status effect early, and I always just thought that was really cool. I can't actually think off the top of my head if you can do that in Ocarina of Time or not. Anyways, somebody can let me know in the comments if that's a thing or not. But anyways, so in some of the Zelda games you can do something like that. Now, one thing I think is really sad about this game is I so wish you could just use the harp to do the same thing. Like, it's really easy, you just press up on the D-pad, you could just strum a couple times, and then poof, the curse effect is gone, you can go back to fighting. I think that would be really cool. It's super easy to do. Like, it would actually make the harp have a practical application other than just the gossip stones and stuff like this. So we're getting to this point in the game where fairies just aren't super useful anymore because they only heal us, I think, 7 hearts or whatever, but heart potions are definitely more beneficial with this many hearts, especially if you have the bugs to support upgrading them. So collect bugs along the way, and this will allow us to upgrade heart potions into Heart Potion Plus Plus, which allows us to heal us completely and be used twice, which is super awesome. It's actually kind of interesting because it's like it's almost like a reference to previous Zelda titles, or like, yeah, it's like a better system of previous things they've done, although it is a little bit awkward if you're missing certain bugs. But anyways, one of the next things we're going to need some bottles of water. Now there's a pool out here, and that's why they have it here, so you can return to this place and get more water. Now we're going to need 2 bottles of it, and I don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and empty out my bottles of fairies because fairies don't really matter too much anyways. But I also do have a bottle of glittering spores, which I can use to create more fairies whenever I want, so I'm not worried about it myself. So do whatever you want. I would recommend you empty out at least 1 bottle to fill with water, and you can return to get another bottle of it here in a little bit if you don't want to empty all of your bottles to do that. I currently have 2 bottles filled with water. So when you completed the sand ship, the upgrade that you got for getting Nehru's Flame was that our sword can now douse for more targets. We have more slots to douse for with C, and one of the things that you can get is the ability to douse for goddess cubes, and this will happen the next time you talk with Gorko after you have completed the sand ship. So now we can douse for goddess cubes, which is awesome. And one useful thing about this too is just to figure out if an area has a goddess cube or not. So you go to a particular zone, and then you just start dowsing, and it'll start blinking if there's any goddess cubes in that zone at all. So you can narrow down which ones still have goddess cubes for you to find, or whatever. But it is very helpful for some of the ones that are up high and kind of tricky locations. Now, if you've been following along with me, I actually have already gotten all the really tricky ones, in my opinion. So I've already collected all of those, so it's not a big deal. But this is kind of the point in the game where you can hunt them down yourself if you have not figured it out so far. Now, continuing onwards, there is a stone tablet off to the right. You can talk to it, and it says that you need to satisfy the thirst of the nearby frog mouth thing. So you want to stand up next to it and then dump a bottle of water on it with the minus button on your controller. So at this point, if you only used one bottle for the water, you're going to have to go back to the pool and fill up that bottle again with water so that you can come over here. So you want to grab onto the nearby vines with the claw shots, jump across. This will allow you to stand right above this particular frog mouth thing and use the other bottle of water, or the same one if you went and filled it up again. Alright, so Gorko says that there is a giant frog thing up ahead, and we need a large amount of water to satisfy its thirst. We're going to need a big container because our small bottles will not take care of this. So we're going to have to find a large container of water, and if after a moment after you walk away, then Fi will tell you that there is no water that she detects in the nearby vicinity. So we're going to have to go somewhere else to find a bunch of water. Now, as you can probably guess, the only zone that has a lot of water in it is pretty much actually to Skyloft, but other than that is going to be Farron. So we're going to have to go to Farron and find some water and some container to contain it in. And that's our next objective. Now, before you continue on and leave, you want to go ahead and go to the far left where there is actually a window. And you can't claw shot to anything over here, but you can climb up into the windowsill. From here, you can follow the nearby paths, which lead to a goddess cube. Now, again, because we just spoke with Gorko, there was you can now douse for the goddess cube and would have realized that there was one up here. Now here I was just testing out to see if I could shoot the nearby Lizalfos, and I didn't think it would work, but I just was testing it just to see, and I was curious if I was trying to make sure if I got a headshot, I wanted to see if that would get past his defenses, but it did not, so that's fine. That was about what I expected, but I just wanted to try it out real quick. And that's really what writing walkthroughs is all about. It's just a bunch of experimentation and taking notes. Like, I've had people over the years send me messages and stuff being like, is it possible for me to, watch you writing a walkthrough sometime? Like, the whole process, whatever, of you recording it and everything? I'm like, well, it's not really all that interesting. Like, at least I don't think so. Maybe, listening to my voice of me musing about it out loud might be kind of interesting. Can I do this? Can I do that? And, just a bunch of experimentation might be kind of interesting to see, I suppose. But other than that, it's not. It's just a lot of optimization and musing about what would be the most efficient way to do it and stuff like that. I don't know. If that's something that you guys would like, though, it's just a little bit more casual walkthrough. I try to only show what's actually necessary or something like that, and try and have a lot of fast forwarding and stuff. If it's all live, it's kind of hard to do that fast forward through stuff, because I kind of want to have just the gameplay so I can skip over it without having my voice all in the background, just kind of weird. So here I was trying to use some glittering spores on the rupees. What it does is it changes the value of that rupee to one other color, so it changes green to, changes it from green or blue or red, just toggles it back and forth. I think you can actually do a silver rupee. So right there, apparently maybe using the bottle, Link's hand moving forward, apparently collected the rupees. So that didn't work out. Anyways, that's the end of this video, folks. Join me for the next one where we will go get some water to enter the Fire Sanctuary. Where are you at, lizard? Don't mind me. I don't actually know where this one is. Supposedly it's right up against this wall. Yeah. Right. I don't know what you mean. I was perfectly legit. And somebody walks up like, what are you doing?